The fluorescent lights in St. Raphael Memorial's emergency department hummed with a tired insect-like buzz. It was close to midnight in New Orleans, the kind of summer night where the air outside clung to skin like a wet towel. In here, the air was overcooled and dry, smelling of antiseptic burnt coffee and the faint copper tang that never quite left a trauma ward. Monitors beeped in staggered rhythm. A television in the waiting room whispered highlights from an old basketball game no one was watching. Somewhere down the hall, a janitor's cart squeaked as it turned a corner. The whole place felt suspended like a held breath. At the far end of the main corridor, Riley Hale was reloading a crash cart. She moved quickly, but nothing about her was rushed. Her hands worked in clean, economical patterns. Ampules lined up along the top tray label forward. Intubation blades checked, clicked, and returned to their slots. Syringes in neat rows, color-coded caps, all pointing the same way. She opened each drawer, scanned, adjusted like she was tuning an instrument. Her badge said Riley Hale RN, but she handled the equipment like a quartermaster taking inventory before a mission. She paused for a second, palm resting on a package of 18-gauge ivory catheters, feeling the weight of the cart under her hand. The wheels squeaked almost imperceptibly when she leaned into it. The sound made her jaw tighten. For a moment, her gaze went unfocused past the linoleum, past the walls. Hot wind, grit between her teeth, sand stinging her eyes under a sky the color of burned bone. Riley blinked it away. The light here was harsh and white and buzzing. No sand, just waxed floors. She opened the top drawer again, even though she had just checked it. Epinephrine, atropine, amiodarone, everything in its place. Everything ready, even if the room itself felt like it was half asleep. You keep circling that thing, you're going to drill a hole straight through the floor. The voice came from behind her, rough with fatigue and coffee. Riley closed the drawer, set her face, and turned. Denise Carter stood with her arms folded, one hip leaned against the doorframe. Her scrubs were a darker blue than the rest of the staff, the unofficial color of a charge nurse. Silver threads glinted in her tight curls. A plastic badge reel bounced against her chest every time she shifted. "I'm making sure it's stocked," Riley said. Her voice was even polite, the kind she used on family members who asked where the vending machines were. "It was stocked an hour ago," Denise replied. "And half an hour before that. You have checked that cart more than I check my ex-husband's alimony payments." Riley shrugged. "You never know what's going to roll through those doors." She said it lightly, but her eyes flicked to the double glass doors at the far end of the hall. They were closed reflections of the bright interior hiding the dark parking lot outside. Every few minutes they sighed open to let a visitor out or a nurse back in. Doors, she thought, always doors. Denise followed her glance, then looked back at Riley, studying her face. "This is uptown New Orleans, not Kandahar," Denise said. The words were casual, almost tossed away, but they landed heavy between them. "The worst thing that's likely to roll through there tonight is a drunk tourist with a novelty hurricane and a head wound." Riley's mouth twitched. "Drunks bleed too," she said. Denise snorted softly. "They do, and you'll be right there with a mop and a Band-Aid." She stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough that it did not carry down the corridor. "You're good, Hale, scary good. But this is a hospital, not a fob. You don't have to live like you're one bad call away from mortars." A monitor alarm chirped from a nearby room, then quieted when someone pressed a button. Static? Always static? Riley listened past it out of habit, as if underneath the digital noise there might be something else, something real. "I'm just doing my job," she said. "Yeah," Denise answered. "That's what I'm afraid of." Before Riley could reply, a door swung open halfway down the hall. Dr. Marcus Harlow stepped out of a dictation room, slipping his phone into the pocket of a crisp white coat. He looked like he had walked out of a hospital brochure. Dark hair combed back, jaw clean-shaven tie, still knotted neatly despite the late hour. His name tag read, Marcus Harlow, MD Trauma Surgery. The letters underneath in smaller print listed 3 more titles that had to do with committees and leadership. "Hale," he said, nodding once as he approached. "Carter." "Evening, Doctor," Denise replied. Her tone was respectful with just enough warmth to keep it from sounding bitter. She pushed off the doorframe. "You're back early. Thought you went home." "Got called in on that MVC from earlier," Harlow said. "Kid with a spleen laceration. We took him upstairs 30 minutes ago. He'll be fine." He said it like a verdict. Case closed. Riley watched him as he spoke, noticing the tiny details. The faint smudge near his shoulder where someone's blood had dried and been wiped off too quickly. The edge of fatigue hiding behind clear eyes. The way his hand adjusted his stethoscope without him noticing. He caught her watching. "Is that cart ready, Hale?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Riley answered. "You can ease up on the inspections," he said. "We follow protocol here. Equipment logs, daily checks, all that. You don't have to reinvent the system." Her fingers resting on the cart handle tightened slightly. I know the protocol. Good, Harlow replied. Stick to it and we'll get along just fine. It was not a threat, not exactly, just a line drawn where everyone could see it. Do you need anything else? Dr. Riley asked. For the moment, no. He glanced toward the doors himself out of habit. Quiet is not a bad thing. Denise's brow rose. You know what happens every time somebody says that word in the ER. I'm a surgeon, Carter, not superstitious, Harlow said. If something comes in, we'll handle it by the book. He moved past them, shoes clicking softly on the linoleum, and disappeared around the corner toward the staff lounge. Riley watched him go, then turned back to the crash cart. The drawers were flush, the labels straight, the seals unbroken. There was nothing left to adjust. Her hands hovered for a moment anyway, as if searching for a task that did not exist. Denise blew out a slow breath. Find something else to fuss over, Hale. Go check on triage. Mrs. LeBlanc is probably trying to convince someone she needs another dose of Dilaudid for her migraine. Riley nodded. Yes, ma'am. She pushed the cart back into its slot by the trauma bay doorway until it clicked into the wall charger. The sound was small, but it made something in her chest settle. She walked past the double doors again. This time they slid open with a soft hiss, letting in a brief gust of thick, humid air from outside. It smelled of rain-soaked asphalt exhaust and faintly the river. For a heartbeat, her skin prickled, every sense leaning forward, waiting for the sound of approaching sirens. There were none. The doors closed behind her with a sigh, and the monitor beeps rose again, steady and indifferent, filling the space where the sirens should have been. Riley straightened the badge at her collar, rolled her shoulders once, and headed for the triage desk, her footsteps quiet against the floor. Her hands were empty. That more than anything made her uneasy. The triage desk sat just off the waiting area, a half circle of laminate and scratched plexiglass, where the chaos of the city met the rules of the hospital. A tired fan turned slowly on a shelf, pushing cool air around piles of forms and a tub of blunt pencils. A woman in her 60s leaned on the counter, one hand pressed to her temple. Thick perfume clung to her like a second dress. I told them it is a 10, she was saying to the clerk. Right here it feels like somebody has a knife in my skull. Behind her, a man in a Saints jersey snored softly in a plastic chair, his head tipped back, mouth open. A half-empty styrofoam cup of red slush sat in his hand, tilted dangerously. Riley stepped behind the desk and checked the board. 4 names, nothing in red, no one in a hallway, no one on a stretcher. It was about as calm as this place ever got. Mrs. LeBlanc, the clerk, mouthed, silently, rolling her eyes just enough for Riley to see. Mrs. LeBlanc Riley said out loud, placing her hands on the counter, You were here 3 days ago, right? The woman straightened, offended. That was different. This is much worse. Your CT scan was clean, Riley said. We can give you something for the pain tonight, but I need to check your vitals first. Mrs. LeBlanc sighed dramatically. If I had real insurance, I bet I would not have to beg like this. Riley offered a small, worn smile. You do not have to beg. You just have to sit so I can get a blood pressure on you. As she wrapped the cuff around the woman's arm, the overhead speaker crackled to life with a gentle chime. Dr. Nguyen to radiology, Dr. Nguyen to radiology. More static, then silence again. The cuff inflated with a soft whir. Riley listened, stethoscope bell pressed against the inside of the elbow, eyes on the needle. The sound of the pulse appeared crisp and steady. One more ordinary number in a night full of them. She wrote it down, finished the rest of the quick exam, and clicked through a few boxes on the screen. Behind her, a security guard laughed at something on his phone. A candy wrapper crinkled. Then the phone at the triage desk rang. Not the regular line, the one the clerk used to call upstairs. The red one on the far side that hardly ever rang at all. The laughter cut off. The clerk grabbed the receiver. Triage, this is Monica. Her voice changed on the second word, turning flat and alert. Yes? Okay. How many? Do we have ETA? All right, I will let them know. She hung up, already reaching for the overhead paging system. Her hand shook just enough for Riley to notice. Denise was there 2 seconds later, as if the call had pulled her from the end of the hall. What is it? Riley asked. Multi-vehicle collision on the Crescent City connection, Monica said. Her eyes were wide now. Rain on the bridge. They counted at least 8 cars, maybe more. EMS says multiple ejections. They are calling it a mass casualty. The words seemed to settle over the desk like a drop in air pressure. How many critical? Denise asked. 6, maybe more, Monica replied. 10 walking wounded so far. First rig is 5 minutes out. Denise was already moving. All right, we open every trauma bay, get anybody with a pulse out of fast track and into chairs. Call CT, tell them no more outpatient scans, everything is on hold. She snapped her fingers once at the security guard. You clear a path from the ambulance bay to trauma 1 and 2. I do not want anybody in the hall who is not bleeding. Riley felt something uncoil in her chest. Not panic, not fear, something like focus snapping into place. Where do you want me? She asked. Denise pointed toward the back. Get trauma 1 and 2 ready. You are with Harlow on the first critical that rolls in. Lila with the second. Yes, ma'am. Riley turned away from triage. Mrs. LeBlanc called after her, voice rising. What about my medicine? Someone will be with you, Riley said without looking back. Her strides had lengthened. The floor seemed to tilt a fraction under her feet, as if the building itself had leaned toward the sound of incoming sirens. The doors at the ambulance bay already stood open when she reached them. Rain patterned the concrete just outside, a fine mist drifting in under the fluorescent lights. The smell of exhaust and wet asphalt pushed against the cleaner antiseptic air. Inside Trauma 1, she hit the overhead switch. The brighter procedure lights flicked on, washing the room in a harsh white that left no shadows. She pulled a fresh sheet over the gurney with one smooth snap, then checked the suction, the oxygen, the ventilator settings. Her fingers flew over drawers and trays, confirming supplies she already knew were there. Intubation kit, chest tube tray, central line set. She adjusted each one by the habit, aligning handles, rotating caps so labels faced her. In the next bay, Lila Cho was laying out instruments, lips pressed tight. The resident's hands trembled slightly as she arranged clamps on a metal tray. You good? Riley asked. I am fine, Lila said. Her eyes said something else. Riley did not argue. I will take Trauma 1. You stick with Harlow unless he says otherwise. I am assigned to him, Lila muttered. You are assigned to us. Then we are all in the right place, Riley replied. The radio clipped to the wall near the bay, crackled, then filled with the hurried voices of paramedics. St. Raphael, this is Medic 12, en route 3 minutes out. Male 40, unrestrained driver, head-on collision, chest, deformity, labored breathing. GCS 9. Satias dropping despite non-rebreather. We are bagging. Medic 12, this is St. Raphael, Denise answered from the nurse's station microphone. You will be Trauma 1. We are ready for you. More static. Sirens faint at first, then growing louder. Harlow strode into Trauma 1, tugging on a pair of gloves. His coat was gone now, tie loosened. Shirt sleeves rolled up to the forearms. What do we have? He asked. 40s male unrestrained chest trauma, poor sats, Riley said. 1 minute out. All right, he nodded once. Lila, you take the chest tube when we get to it. I will handle the airway. Lila swallowed. Yes, doctor. Riley rolled the ventilator closer, checked the settings again, and moved to the patient's side of the bed. Her hands found the bed rails without her looking. The sirens hit the bay like a wave. The first rig backed up to the open doors, brakes squealing on wet concrete. The rear doors flew open, and the paramedics rolled their gurney down the ramp at a trot. Male 4, 2 front seat. No belt, the lead medic called out as they pushed into the room. Left chest is a mess. We have got paradoxical motion sats, dropping into the 70s. He is barely with us. They lifted the man onto the hospital bed in a practiced blur of movement. He was an odd gray-blue skin, slick with sweat. His shirt had already been cut away, exposing a chest that rose and fell in a broken rhythm. A patch of ribs on the left side sucked in when he tried to inhale and bulged outward on the exhale. Riley caught the medic's eye. Any breath sounds on the left, she asked. Faint, if at all, he replied. We were too short on time for a needle. Harlow moved to the head of the bed. On my count, 1, 2, 3. They slid the backboard out. Bag him. Riley took the bag valve mask from the medic and sealed it over the man's mouth and nose. The plastic creaked under her grip. She squeezed, feeling the resistance, watching his chest rise in a twisted pattern. The monitor came alive with numbers. Heart rate fast. Sats at 78 and falling. Looks like a flail segment, Harlow said. We need to secure that lung. Lila chest tube on the left. 5th intercostal midaxillary. Lila nodded, moving to the tray, picking up a scalpel with gloved fingers that still trembled. She pressed her palm against the patient's side, searching for landmarks. Riley watched the motion of the man's chest, the way the trachea seemed to pull a little to the right with each breath. She listened to the bag, the air wheezing through narrowed space. Static from the monitor filled her ears just under the sound of the beeping. The screen showed what it could. The body told the rest. Too low, she thought. You will skate under the mess and miss the pressure. Lila placed the tip of the blade against the skin lower than Riley liked. The ribs moved under her hand. The man's SATs dipped to 74. Dr. Riley set her voice level. He is building a tension pneumo. You want that tube higher. 2nd intercostal mid-clavicular angle back. For a heartbeat, the room held still. Harlow did not look up from the airway. Nurse Hale, you are here to assist, he said. Not to direct the procedure. The mechanics are bad, Riley said. She kept squeezing the bag. In. Out. 1 breath every few seconds. You go too low, you risk the liver, or you miss the air pocket and collapse what is left of that lung. Harlow lifted his head, then eyes cutting toward her over his mask. Do your job, Hale, he said quietly. Let the doctors do theirs. Color climbed Lila's neck above her gown. Her hand hovered uncertain now. The monitor alarm quickened loud and insistent. 7068. Riley shut her mouth. The bag rose and fell under her hands. She could feel the resistance building. Harlow turned back to the airway, guiding the laryngoscope into the man's throat. After a moment, he slid the tube, watched it pass the cords, and nodded. Tube in, confirm. Breath sounds on the right, almost nothing on the left. He frowned just for a second. Adjust the plan, he said. Second intercostal midclavicular angle posterior. His gaze never left the monitors. Lila, move. Lila shifted her hand higher, found the space, and made the incision. Blood welled up. She pushed the hemostat through the intercostal muscles, then fed the chest tube along its track. When she connected it, there was a rush of air and a wet rattle as fluid started to drain. The left side of the man's chest began to rise more evenly. The S8s climbed back up, crawling into the mid-80s, then higher. The shrill alarm softened. There we go, Harlow said. Textbook. He stripped off one pair of gloves and reached for a saline flush. Riley kept the bag moving, watching the patient's chest, not his face. Saline Hale, Harlow said, holding out a hand. Unless you have a better way of doing that too. Several pairs of eyes flicked toward her, then away. No one said anything. She handed him the syringe. Her knuckles had gone white around the plastic. Thank you, he said, a shade too bright. Denise appeared in the doorway, hair slightly damp from the mist outside. Trauma 2 is ready for the next rig, she called. Highway Patrol says they are still pulling people off that bridge. The medic who had brought in the first driver wiped his forehead on his sleeve. That was just the beginning, he said under his breath. Riley kept her eyes on the monitor and the rise and fall of the man's chest. The static filled the room again, steady and indifferent. The next 30 minutes tore the quiet out of St. Raphael Memorial by the roots. Rees came in, one after another, red lights washing the bay in pulses. Wet tires squealed on the concrete, the air filled with diesel rain and the metallic smell of blood. The hallway outside the trauma rooms clogged with stretchers for a few frantic moments, then cleared as staff moved in practiced patterns. 2 teenagers with glass in their hair and seatbelt bruises. A woman in a cocktail dress, mascara streaked, holding an arm that bent where it should not. An older man with a leg twisted under him, moaning through clenched teeth. Walking wounded lined the chairs, blankets draped over shoulders, paper bracelets snapped onto wrists. Inside the bays, there was a rhythm to the chaos. Someone calling out vital signs, someone hanging fluids, someone cutting away clothes. The static of monitors grew into a chorus. Riley moved through it, hands steady, motions clean. A tourniquet on a thigh, a quick set of bilateral IVs, a few calm words into a panicked face. She stepped in where it needed, then slid back out to let the flow of people close over the space she had filled. Between one call for gauze and the next request for a suture kit, she realized the adrenaline had leveled out. Her breathing was deep and measured. Her thoughts felt sharp. This she understood. Medic 9 to St. Raphael, last critical from bridge scene. 2 out, non-emergent. Law enforcement still on location for cleanup. The radio message snapped through the overhead speakers in a burst of static. Copy Medic 9, Denise answered from the desk, voice clipped. Bring them to triage on arrival. The volume in the department dropped by a notch. No one relaxed, not yet, but shoulders eased a fraction. Gloves were stripped off and replaced. Trash bags were tied and hauled away. A few people reached automatically for coffee cups that were no longer where they had left them. Riley finished taping an IV line and patted the young man's shoulder. You are going to be sore, she said, straightening. But you are lucky. He nodded, dazed eyes following the movement of staff around him like he was watching a documentary of someone else's life. She stepped out of the bay, pulled her mask down to her chin for a breath of cooler air, and started toward the sink to wash the sweat from her face. The sound that stopped her was small, almost polite, but it cut through the background noise. A telephone ringing 3 short tones in a row. Not the triage phone, not the regular line. The one by the charge desk, mounted on its own bracket, its cord coiled tighter, its plastic a slightly different shade of gray. Riley had heard it ring twice in the 3 months she had been here. Denise was already halfway to it when Riley turned. She picked up the receiver, pressed it to her ear, and listened. St. Raphael, Charge Nurse Carter. Her back stiffened. Her free hand went flat on the desk. Yes, she said, this is Carter. I understand. She went quiet. Her jaw worked once. How long, she asked. Riley could not hear the answer. She watched the color drain slowly from Denise's face. 2 minutes, Denise repeated. Understood. We are ready. She hung up without saying goodbye. The room around them did not know yet. Voices continued. A printer spit out labels. Someone laughed weakly at a joke near triage. Denise turned in a slow circle, finding Harlow first. Doctor, she called. There was something in her voice that made a few other heads lift. We have a code red coming into Trauma 1. Harlow straightened from the chart he was signing. From where he asked. Port Authority, Denise said. They did not give details. Unidentified male, multiple gunshot wounds, high caliber. Transport by secured unit, 2 minutes out. The words dropped across the department in sequence. Unidentified, multiple gunshot wounds, high caliber. Code red. The medic at the coffee machine stopped pouring. The security guard straightened off his stool. Even the resident at the computer in the corner pulled his eyes from the screen. Riley felt a chill work up the back of her neck. The bridge crashes had been messy, but this was something different. She had heard the term before under different lights with a different set of protocols attached. Clear Trauma 1, Harlow said. The command kicked everyone into motion again. I want it reset. Full kit central line set. Rapid transfuser thoracotomy tray in the room. Call blood bank. Tell them we need O negative on standby. As much as they can spare. Already did, Denise answered, moving toward the trauma bay. Riley, you are in Trauma 1. Lila, you are with her. I will coordinate from the desk. Riley pulled her mask back over her face and walked toward Trauma 1. Her steps felt steady, but her skin was alive with small electric pricks. The air seemed heavier, like just before a storm. In the doorway, she stopped for half a second, eyes scanning the room automatically. Fresh sheet. Monitor cleared. Suction tested. Ventilator ready. An empty cooler waited on the counter for blood. A stainless steel tray held instruments still and gleaming. She tugged a pair of new gloves on, then another pair over the first. She checked the rapid transfuser, listening to the quiet hum as it powered on her hand, resting on the warm plastic casing. Lila stood on the other side of the bed, hands folded tightly in front of her eyes too wide above her mask. You ever worked a code red from Port Authority? Riley asked. Lila shook her head. Stick close, Riley said. Do not touch anything unless Harlow tells you to, or I do. Lila swallowed. Is this military? Riley did not answer. She did not need to. The air itself seemed to say it. A radio voice crackled through the overhead speaker by the ambulance entrance. St. Raphael secured transport inbound. 30 seconds. Riley moved to the head of the bed, then thought better of it and stepped to the right side instead. She wanted a clear view of the chest, the neck, the abdomen. Her fingers found the rails again, measuring the space. The doors to the ambulance bay slid open. It was not an EMS rig that backed up to the dock this time. It was a dark sport utility vehicle with government plates paint slick with rain. The engine idled rough and low. The rear doors opened and 2 men jumped out. They wore black tactical gear, no department patches, no city logos. Their vests bulged in places that suggested plates, clips, radios. One of them had a sidearm holstered at his hip, the grip dark with wear. They rolled a gurney down the small ramp at a controlled jog. Their faces were set, eyes scanning as if expecting threats even inside the bright, overclean bay. Trauma 1, the taller one barked. Here, Harlow answered, stepping into their line of sight. He had appeared as if summoned, mask up, gloves on. We will take it from here. They wheeled the gurney into the room. Riley saw the patient as he passed. For a moment, she thought he was already gone. He was very pale, the kind of color that never looked like sleep. His shirt and vest had been cut away or shredded, leaving only tatters and the ghost outline of body armor straps. His torso, arms, and upper thighs were spattered with blood, but it was not the messy, chaotic pattern of random fire. The wounds were small, dark holes grouped in tight clusters at the edges of where plates would have sat. Under each arm, at the notch above the sternum, along the lower abdomen, at the inner pelvis. Her mind named them without asking permission. Plate line, groin, axilla, pelvic gutter. They lifted him onto the hospital bed. As his right leg shifted, a piece of equipment came free and clattered to the floor. Riley saw it out of the corner of her eye. A tourniquet, windlass style, high-quality nylon and aluminum. Not the brand the hospital stocked. Not the model the city medics carried. Her blood ran cold. The taller of the 2 men reached for the tourniquet without thinking, then stopped when a security guard stepped between him and the floor. You cannot have that in here, the guard said, eyes on the holstered weapon. His hand hovered near his own radio. We need you both out of the room, Harlow said. He pitched his voice to sound in charge. Now. This is our trauma bay. The shorter man's gaze flicked around the room, taking in faces, exits, the location of the oxygen tanks. For an instant, Riley felt the weight of his eyes on her, measuring something. This is a high-value patient, he said. We stay with him. That is not how this works, Harlow replied. Security will show you where to wait. The 2 men looked at each other. Something passed between them, a silent calculation. Then the taller one nodded once. We will be in the hall, he said. They stepped back, leaving a trail of water on the floor, where it dripped from their boots and disappeared into the doorway. The security guard shadowed them as if he could do anything about men like that. Harlow turned back to the bed. What have we got? He asked. Multiple gunshot wounds, high caliber, time of injury. Unknown. The paramedic from the secured unit replied. His voice had the same controlled tone as the men who had brought the patient in, but his uniform bore the colors of the Port Authority. He lost a lot of blood in transit. We gave tranexamic acid and 3 units of whole blood. He kept leaking. Riley leaned in, fingers already searching for a carotid pulse. Nothing she could feel. Monitor on, she said. The screen lit up, heart rate fast, numbers jumping, blood pressure unreadable, oxygen saturation a flat line of zeros. Start compressions, Harlow ordered. A resident climbed onto a stool and began pushing down on the man's sternum, arms locked. The sound of ribs cracking echoed off the walls. Riley moved to the right side of the chest, eyes sweeping over the wounds. Too many to count quickly. Blood oozed from some others had already crusted. His abdomen looked distended. His skin was cool under her gloved fingertips. 2 large-bore IVUs, Harlow said. Get me a central line kit. Someone hang 10 units of O negative and bring the rapid transfuser online. Lila, I want a fast scan as soon as you can get ultrasound on the belly and chest. Orders filled the air, stacking on top of each other. Riley snapped tourniquet bands onto both arms, slid in 2 wide-bore catheters, and opened the lines. Blood arrived in a white cooler bag, slapping wetly against each other. She spiked them and fed them into the rapid transfuser. The machine groaned and began to pump, pressing warmed blood into veins that did not seem to notice. Lila smeared gel on the ultrasound probe. Her hand shook as she pressed it to the man's right upper abdomen. The screen bloomed with shifting gray and black. I cannot see, she muttered. Too much artifact. Look for free fluid in Morrison's pouch, Harlow said, not looking away from the monitor. The rhythm strip showed pulseless electrical activity. The heart had electricity. The mechanics were gone. It is all black, Lila whispered. Either he is full of blood or the image is blown. I cannot tell. Keep scanning, Harlow snapped. Riley glanced at the blood bags. The level in each one dropped quickly, emptying one after another. The lines ran red, then pink, then almost watery as they mixed with what was already inside him. Doctor, she called. That is 10 units in. His pressure is still not registering. Hang more, Harlow said. He is not clotting, Riley added. The blood dripping onto the floor from a pelvic wound was thin and runny like red tea. The resident on the stool grunted with effort, sweat shining on his forehead above the mask. These compressions are moving air, Riley said, not blood. Harlow stared at the monitor at the waveforms that said the heart was trying to fire. He looked at the ultrasound screen. It was a storm of static and shadow. We cannot find a primary source, he said. The words came out strained. No single one, Riley corrected under her breath. He is leaking everywhere. The rapid transfuser beeped, signaling an empty bag. Riley swapped it out for another. The floor around the bed had darkened streaks of red spreading under the wheels. The alarm on the monitor changed. The heart rhythm wavered, then settled into a thin, shaky line. The resident shifted his weight and kept counting under his breath. Riley watched the patient's face. His eyes were half open, pupils blown, lashes clumped with dried blood. His mouth hung slack intubation tube, fogging faintly with each bagged breath. Stop, Harlow said. The word was soft, but it cut through the room. The resident froze, hands hovering above the sternum. Stop compressions, Harlow repeated. He straightened, pulling his gloves off in quick jerks. They hit the floor with a slap. The only sound left was the flat, continuous tone of the monitor alarm and the drip of fluid onto plastic. He has non-survivable injuries, Harlow said. His voice was rough. We have followed the protocol. Airway, breathing, circulation. We have given massive transfusion. There is no blood pressure, no meaningful response. This is futile. Futile. He lifted his eyes to the clock on the wall. Time of death 0243. Lila lowered the ultrasound probe. Gel smeared across the cooling skin. The resident stepped down from the stool, chest heaving. He wiped a forearm across his brow, leaving a streak of blood. No one moved to turn off the rapid transfuser. It hummed quietly beside the bed, the line still running into a body that no longer answered. No one moved. The flat tone from the monitor crawled along the ceiling, thin and unbroken. It mixed with the drip of blood from the edge of the mattress and the soft mechanical whine of the rapid transfuser. The air in Trauma 1 felt heavy, as if the room itself had exhaled and then forgotten how to draw breath again. Lila stared at the ultrasound probe in her hand. Denise stood in the doorway, knuckles white around a clipboard. The resident stepped back from the bed, eyes fixed on the motionless chest he had just been pounding. Riley did not look at any of them. She looked at the body. The man's chest was still. His skin had the waxy pallor she had seen 100 times before, but there was something wrong about the way his neck lay against the pillow, something too tight in the space above his heart. The intubation tube fogged once when she squeezed the bag again, then cleared. The monitor kept screaming that he was gone. Static, she thought. Her palm rested on his ribs, cool skin sticky with dried blood. Beneath that, the hard cage of bone. Beneath that, something that did not move the way it should have. Her hand drifted higher, fingers pressing gently between sternum and left clavicle. There was no give, no hollow behind bone. It felt like pushing down on a full water balloon. She had felt that shape before. The smell of burnt cordite came back fast, sharper than the antiseptic in her nose. The hiss and crack of small arms fire. Darkness broken by the strobe of muzzle flashes, sand under her knees soaked dark. Riley saw another body in her mind. A young soldier on a stretcher belly, torn open, both legs gone above the knee, blood everywhere, hot and slick, turning dust into mud. Radio static in her ear. He is expectant, Hale. Fall back to the rally point. That is a direct order. General Strickland's voice calm and distant, like he was talking about a broken truck, not a 19-year-old whose hand was clamped around Riley's wrist. The boy's lips had moved. No sound at first, then a faint rasp. Please. He had not said a name, just the one word. Riley had looked at him then, at the extraction bird squatting on the far edge of the field, its rotors chewing the air, crew chief waving people back. She had known the numbers. Supplies low, enemy pressing. Triage meant some walked, some waited, some died. She had shoved her hand into what was left of his groin anyway, fingers searching through shredded tissue until they found the thick, pounding rope of his femoral artery. She had pinched it between her thumb and the side of her index finger and held on. Negative, sir, she had said into the radio. He is not expectant, he is just bleeding. Someone had tried to pull her away. She had snarled at them without thinking. She had kept her hand there all the way to the bird, then on the bird, then in the tent. Her arm cramped and numb and burning while the surgeons had shouted for clamps. He had lived. Her career had not. In Trauma 1, Riley slid her fingers a fraction lower on the man's chest and pressed again. The resistance told her what the ultrasound had not. The heart was not beating. It was not empty either. It was trapped inside its own blood. He is not just bleeding, she said. Her voice came out too soft. No one heard it. She spoke louder. He is not non-survivable, she said. He is in tamponade. Oh, his pericardium is full. Harlow turned his head. His eyes were tired and angry and something else, something that looked a lot like fear. Time of death has been called, he said. Step back from the bed, Nurse Hale. You are dismissed. Riley did not move. The ultrasound is useless, she said. The blood is clotted. You will not see it. You have to feel it. His heart cannot fill. That is why you have PEA with no pressure. You can fix that. Harlow took one step toward her. Get out, he said. The edge in his voice sharpened. Right now. I will not tell you again. The monitor continued to howl in the background. The resident shifted weight, scraping on the stool. Lila's eyes flicked from Harlow to Riley and back again. Static. Riley looked at the man on the table. His lashes were clumped, speckled with blood. A drop hung on the underside of one suspended. Her hand on his chest felt very small. No, she said. The word surprised even her. It fell into the room and sat there, heavy and solid. What did you say? Harlow asked. No, Riley repeated. You are wrong. Something broke open in her then. Not a flood exactly, more like a dam that stopped pretending it was not cracked. She reached for the instrument tray before anyone could move. Her fingers closed around a 10-blade scalpel. The weight of it was nothing at all. The idea of it was enormous. Security, Harlow snapped. His voice jumped an octave. Stop her. She is not authorized to perform any procedure. 2 security guards had been hovering near the doorway, drawn by the code red. They jolted and stepped forward. Ma'am, put that down, one said. His hand hovered near her elbow. Denise caught his sleeve. Do not touch her, she said. Her voice shook, but she held on. Riley was already leaning over the chest. Riley, Lila whispered. You cannot. Riley spoke without looking up. If you are going to fire me, you can do it after, she said. Then she cut. She started at the notch at the base of the throat and dragged the blade down in one clean motion to the bottom of the sternum. The skin parted under the steel. Blood welled up dark and thick. Someone gasped. It might have been Lila. It might have been the resident. Denise's hand flew to her mouth. You are insane, Harlow said. He lunged toward her. Riley shoved her shoulder into his chest without turning, knocking him off his line just enough that Denise could get between them. Dr. Denise said, back up. Riley dropped the scalpel on the tray. It clanged loud in the sudden quiet. She grabbed the trauma shears next, jammed the bottom blade under the sternum and squeezed with both hands. The bone gave with a wet crunch. She worked the shears down, cutting the cartilage and bone until the chest split open like a book. Heat rolled out of the cavity, a wave of metallic steam. The guard stared, forgotten hands half raised. Riley peeled the ribs apart with a retractor and plunged both hands inside. The sensation was immediate. Warmth, slickness, the dense, spongy give of lungs that were doing nothing useful. Her fingers swept upward and found the heart. It was not beating. It did not flop loosely in her grasp like a truly empty organ. It pushed back firm and swollen, quivering, faintly squeezed tight by something around it. She felt along its surface until she touched the line of the phrenic nerve, a subtle ridge she had been taught to recognize by touch alone. Clear, she said to herself. She snatched the scalpel from the tray with her right hand, left hand still bracing the heart. "Riley, stop," Harlow shouted. She ignored him. She made a short slit in the pericardial sac. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the wound in the sac tore wider under pressure and a jet of thick, half-clotted blood exploded out, hitting her gown, her mask, the wall behind her. It ran down her arms in heavy sheets, filling her gloves, dripping onto the floor. The heart under her hand released. It swelled once, then shuddered. The monitor's flat tone hiccuped, then broke. A single beep, then another. The resident swore under his breath. Riley stared at the screen. A weak, narrow complex crawled across it. The number for heart rate flickered, then stabilized in the 50s. "Bag him," she snapped. Lila grabbed the bag valve mask and squeezed knuckles white. The chest rose and fell. Riley did not savor it. She knew it was not enough. She slid her right hand deeper into the chest, past the heart fingers tunneling through warmth until they found the thick cylinder of the descending aorta. It pulsed weakly against her palm. She wrapped her hand around it and squeezed, pinching the lumen closed. Above the clamp, the heart bulged a little more with each beat, stealing every drop of volume the body had left and hoarding it for the brain and the upper core. Below her hand, the blood flow to the lower body cut to almost nothing. The monitor showed the effect. The blood pressure reading twitched from 0 to numbers so low they almost did not count. It was still a curve where there had been a flat line. "Manual aortic cross-clamp," Riley said softly. It was half reminder, half prayer from an old field manual. "Buys you minutes. Make them matter." She lifted her head. Everyone in the room was staring at her. Her arms were buried in the man's chest up to the elbows. Blood glistened on her forehead where her mask had slid down. Her eyes felt hot and clear. "Denise," she said, "tell Blood Bank we need everything they have. Full rate on the transfuser, FFP, platelets, calcium, all of it." Denise nodded, already moving toward the phone, one hand still pressed to her mouth. Lila, Riley went on, "You are back on the ultrasound. Check his lungs again. I want to know if anything is still collapsing." Lila jolted back into motion, grabbing the probe with trembling fingers. Riley turned her gaze on Harlow. "He has at least one major arterial source you can reach from here," she said. "Subclavian looks likely, maybe an intercostal. His belly is full, but they can pack that upstairs. You need to stop what is dumping blood into his chest, or he crashes the second I let go." Harlow looked at her, then at the open thorax, then at the monitor. "You carved him open without a license," he said. The words sounded hollow even to him. "He was dead with your license," Riley answered. "He is not dead now." The heart thudded weakly against her fingers. The rhythm on the monitor stumbled, then caught again. For a long moment, Harlow did not move. Riley did not speak. She watched his face. The arrogance she had seen earlier in the night was not there. What she saw now was a man who had reached the end of the book he trusted and found no pages left. "Doctor," she said, her voice lowered steady and unflinching, "get in here. Fix it." Something in him shifted. His shoulders dropped by a fraction as if he was setting down a weight he had forgotten he was carrying. He pulled on a fresh pair of gloves and stepped up to the table. He picked up a vascular clamp from the tray, then hesitated. "Where?" he asked. Riley nodded toward the left upper chest. "Up and under the clavicle," she said. "Track along the first rib. You will feel the spray when you get close." He took a breath and followed her instructions. The room narrowed around them. Harlow's hands moved into the cavity beside hers, searching. Lila called out intermittent updates from the ultrasound. Denise shouted back numbers from the blood bank. The rapid transfuser whined, working harder. When Harlow found the torn vessel, the pulse of blood in the upper chest changed. He clamped it. The bleeding from that area slowed from a torrent to a seep. The monitor reflected it. The blood pressure rose a few more precious points. No one spoke for a while after that. They did not have to. They all had work to do. It did not feel like a clean rescue. It felt like dragging someone inches at a time out of quicksand. At some point, the anesthesiologist arrived. The OR called down that they were ready. Surgical techs flooded the room with extra hands and metal trays and quiet-focused energy. They transferred the man to a portable OR bed. Riley kept her grip on the aorta until the last possible moment, walking alongside the rolling frame, then eased off as the anesthesiologist took over the pressure with a clamp. Her hand slid free of the chest. Blood ran down her arms, dripping from her elbows onto the sheets. Her fingers felt numb and strangely light. The doors to the operating suite swallowed the team. The trauma bay was suddenly too quiet. The rapid transfuser still hummed. The monitor over the empty bed blinked a meaningless line across a blank field. The floor was sticky underfoot. Riley stood alone in the middle of it, chest heaving, gloves hanging heavy. She peeled them off slowly. Her skin underneath was pale and wrinkled. There were faint pressure marks across her palms where arteries and bone had pressed back. She closed her hands once, testing the stiffness in her fingers, then let them relax at her sides. From the hall, she could hear Denise talking on the phone, voice low and urgent. Someone mentioned the ICU. Someone else said the words holding his own. Riley did not sit. She did not lean against the wall. She stared at the empty bed where the man had lain and tried to quiet the ringing in her ears. Her hands were no longer empty. They were stained with what she had done. By the time they sent her home to clean up, dawn was starting to lean against the windows. The sky over New Orleans had turned the color of a bruise, purple fading into gray. The storm had moved on, leaving beads of water clinging to the glass. From the staff locker room, Riley could hear the faint echo of a mop bucket rolling along the corridor and the distant chime of an elevator. Her scrubs had gone straight into the biohazard bin. What was left of them looked less like clothing and more like a discarded tarp from a crime scene. Someone had handed her a set of green hospital issue scrubs that felt thinner, cheaper, the fabric stiff against her skin. She stood at the sink and watched rusty pink water swirl down the drain as she scrubbed her hands and forearms. It took time for the stain to fade. Even after the last streak of red disappeared, she kept going. She could still feel the imprint of bone on her palms, the echo of the aorta pulsing against her fingers. None of that washed off. When she stepped out of the locker room, Denise was waiting in the hallway. The charge nurse had taken her own shower. Her curls were damp around her temples, her eyes rimmed faintly with red. Her badge was back in place. Clipboard under one arm again, like the last few hours, could be filed and charted. "How is he?" Riley asked. She had not been allowed near the OR doors. ICU was locked down to essential staff only. Holding, Denise said. "They got him up to surgical ICU about an hour ago. Blood pressure is fragile, but it is there. They packed his abdomen. Harlow fixed the subclavian and a couple of other leaks in the chest. They think he has a shot. A shot, not a promise, not a guarantee." Riley nodded once. It felt like her head belonged to someone else. "Administrative wants to see you," Denise went on. "Now. Conference room by HR." Riley looked past her toward the nurse's station. "My shift is not over," she said. Denise gave a small humorless huff. "Your shift is done. Trust me." There was no point arguing with that tone. Riley followed her down the hallway. The conference room was on a different floor, quieter, carpet instead of linoleum. The lights were softer, the air smelling of toner and stale coffee. There were no monitors here, no alarms. The only sound was the faint whir of the air conditioning. A rectangular table sat in the middle of the room. At one end, a man in a dark suit looked over a folder. Beside him sat a woman with a legal pad and a narrow silver laptop. Across from them alone was an empty chair. Dr. Marcus Harlow sat to the side, his white coat back on a hair combed. His tie was straight again. The only sign of the night's work was a faint shadow under his eyes and a small red line near his collar where a drop of blood had dried and been missed. "Ms. Hale," the man in the suit said, standing halfway, then sitting back down when she entered. "Please have a seat." Riley sat. The chair was hard plastic dressed up to look more expensive than it was. Denise remained in the doorway, one hand on the frame. The man in the suit folded his hands on the table. "My name is Richard Keller," he said. "Hospital administration. This is Ms. Trent from legal." He gestured to the woman with the laptop. "You know Dr. Harlow." Riley looked at Harlow. He did not meet her eyes. His gaze fixed on some point on the table, jaw clenched tight. "We have reviewed the initial reports from Trauma 1, Keller said. We will be taking more complete statements from everyone involved, but the basic facts are not in dispute." He opened the folder. Riley could see a few printed sheets, a couple of photos clipped to one corner. "You performed an emergency thoracotomy on a patient," he continued. "Without a physician's order, without a surgical license, after the attending had called time of death." Riley did not deny it. There was no point. "Yes," she said. "During this action," Ms. Trent added eyes on her notes, "you physically pushed a physician and disregarded instructions from security personnel. You assaulted a resident when you knocked her into Dr. Harlow. You threatened staff who attempted to intervene." Riley thought of Lila stumbling back when she cleared herself space of the guard's hand on her arm. "I told him not to touch me," she said. "If he had, he would have contaminated the field." Ms. Trent's pen paused for a fraction, then resumed its neat scratch. "The patient is alive," Denise said suddenly. Every face in the room turned toward her. "That is not the point," Ms. Carter Keller said. "It is a little bit the point," Denise answered. She took a step into the room. She cracked his chest open when everyone else had walked away. "He has a blood pressure right now because of her." Ms. Trent finally looked up fully. If the patient had died, she said this hospital would already be facing a lawsuit that could cost tens of millions of dollars. As it stands, we are still exposed. There is a security video of a registered nurse performing a procedure far outside her scope of practice and physically shoving a board-certified surgeon. That is what juries see, Ms. Carter. Not intent. Actions. Riley sat very still. Her hands were resting on her thighs, fingers curled inward. Keller nodded to himself as if confirming something on an internal list. Dr. Harlow, he said, do you have anything you wish to add for the record? Harlow cleared his throat. For the first time since she had entered the room, he looked directly at Riley. What she did was reckless, he said. His voice was low, almost hoarse. She disregarded my authority in the trauma bay. She incised the patient without consent, without imaging, without any regard for established protocols. She endangered the entire team. He swallowed. It resembled butchery more than medicine. There was a small, sharp pain behind Riley's ribs. It did not show on her face. She remembered the way his hands had moved beside hers in the chest. The slight tremor when he first found the torn artery. The almost stunned look he had given the monitor when the blood pressure climbed. He knew. Keller slid a document across the table. A pen lay on top of it, blue and capped. St. Raphael Memorial cannot keep you on staff, he said. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. The words were clear and even, no anger, no heat. This, he went on, tapping the document, is a severance and non-disclosure agreement. If you sign it, the hospital will provide you with a modest severance package. We will not contest your unemployment claim. We will not report this incident to the state nursing board, and we will not pursue criminal charges for assault or practicing outside your scope. And if I do not sign, Riley asked. Ms. Trent answered. Then we are obligated to report what happened in full detail to the relevant authorities, she said. Given the security footage, the outcome would likely not be favorable to you. The fluorescent light above the table hummed softly. Riley could see the reflection of her own face in the smooth surface, the borrowed scrubs, the damp hair around her temples, the faint redness at the corners of her eyes. You saved his life, Denise said quietly. She had not moved from the doorway. Riley did not look back at her. She kept her eyes on the paper. You can read it, Keller said. Take your time. The text swam in front of her for a moment. She forced it to hold still. Standard clauses, dates, the sum they were willing to pay her not to exist on their record. She thought of the boy in Syria, of the general's voice on the radio, of the administrative form she had signed afterward that had made it clear she was done with the army. You save the life, you lose the uniform. She thought of the man from the SUV chest, open under her hands, heart-trapped until she cut it free. You save the life, you lose the badge. The pattern was so familiar it almost felt like a joke. Riley uncapped the pen. Her signature came out steadier than she expected. The ink bled a little into the thick paper. Keller collected the document, checked the bottom of the last page, and nodded to Ms. Trent. The laptop closed with a soft click. This concludes the meeting, he said. You will be escorted to retrieve your personal belongings and then to the exit. He stood. Ms. Trent stood. Harlow stayed seated for a moment longer, then pushed his chair back. He did not speak to her. He did not apologize. He did not thank her. Riley rose. Her legs felt light, as if they did not have full weight. In the hallway outside, Denise fell into step beside her. You did the right thing, Denise said very low. Riley gave a small shake of her head, not in disagreement, not in agreement. Just enough to say she had heard. Her locker held very little. A pair of running shoes with worn soles, a faded gray hoodie that smelled faintly of detergent and hospital air, a small plastic bag with travel-size shampoo and toothpaste. She put them into a cheap nylon gym bag and slung it over one shoulder. The metal door of the locker clanged when she shut it. On the way out, they passed the elevator bank that led up to the ICU floor. Riley did not look at it. Denise stopped near a side corridor. This is as far as I can take you, she said. Her voice had gone rough again. They want you out the back. Riley glanced down the hall. The exit sign at the far end glowed red over a metal door with a push bar. Past it through a narrow window, she could see the pale light of morning. Thank you, Riley said. For what? Denise asked. For not letting them put their hands on me, Riley said. In the trauma bay. Denise exhaled hard. You scared the hell out of me, she said. And then you scared the hell out of him. I'm not sure which part I enjoyed more. A corner of Riley's mouth twitched. They stood for a second longer, then it was done. Denise squeezed her shoulder once quick and firm and turned back toward the heart of the hospital. Riley walked alone to the door. The bar under her palms was cool. She pushed. The door opened onto a small concrete loading area behind the building. The sky had brightened to a cloudy pale blue. The air smelled of wet asphalt garbage from a dumpster nearby, and underneath it all, faintly the river. She stepped out. The door closed behind her with a solid click that sounded very much like a lock. She pulled the hood of her sweatshirt up against the morning damp and started walking toward the street, the gym bag bumping against her hip with each step. The street behind St. Raphael Memorial was almost empty. A delivery truck idled at the far corner, hazard lights blinking in the soft morning light. A stray plastic bag fluttered along the curb until it caught on a storm drain. The city sounded distant from here, muffled by the bulk of the hospital. Riley adjusted the strap of the gym bag on her shoulder and turned toward the bus stop at the end of the block. Her sneakers stuck slightly to the damp concrete with each step. The air wrapped around her in a clammy embrace smelling of last night's rain and the sour sweetness of rotting fruit from an overflowing dumpster. She was 3 strides from the alley mouth when a dark sedan eased around the corner and rolled to a smooth stop beside her. It was not a taxi. It was too clean, too quiet. Glossy black windows tinted, government plates. The passenger side window slid down with a soft electric hum. Riley Hale. The man in the front passenger seat wore a dark suit that fit too well to be off the rack. His tie was loosened collar button undone like he had been awake all night and had not had time to make himself perfect again. His hair was clipped neatly short at the sides, longer on top. His eyes were a cool gray that reminded her of river water under overcast skies. She did not stop walking. Not interested, she said. She stepped off the curb to go around the car. The sedan moved a few inches, just enough to stay alongside her without crowding. You did not ask in what the man said. Do not care, Riley replied. He opened his door and got out, shutting it behind him with a quiet click. He was taller than she had expected, but he kept his hands visible and his distance respectful. Up close, she could see the faint crease lines at the corners of his mouth, the way his eyes flicked once around the alley, taking in exits and blind spots. My name is Cole Mercer, he said. I work with a federal task element that coordinates certain joint operations. That is a lot of words that do not tell me anything, Riley said. The back door on the far side of the sedan opened. A woman stepped out. Latina, early 40s hair pulled back in a tight knot at the nape of her neck. She wore a dark blazer over a plain shirt, slacks that allowed easy movement shoes that could run if needed. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes missed nothing. Agent Lana Ortiz, she said. Her voice was low, rough at the edges, like she had been shouting recently and had not quite recovered. Riley stopped then. Not because of their names or the suits or the car, because of the way they stood. Not like bureaucrats, like people accustomed to moving under fire. I just got fired, Riley said. If you are here about hospital policy, you are late. We are not with the hospital, Mercer said. We are not here to discipline you. Ortiz tilted her head slightly, studying Riley's face, her bag, the cheap scrubs, the hospital badge still clipped to her collar. We saw the footage, Ortiz said. Riley felt a thin wire of irritation snap inside her chest. Great, she said. Glad I could add to someone's entertainment queue. Security feed from Trauma 1, Ortiz continued as if she had not heard the jab. Angle over the door, clear view of the bed. She lifted one hand and traced a short line in the air with her finger. Vertical incision, sternal split, hand in the chest, pericardial cut, manual aortic cross-clamp. The words hung there, precise and clinical. Most nurses would not know those steps, Ortiz said. Many surgeons would not risk them under that kind of pressure. A delivery man pushing a dolly stacked with boxes glanced up as he passed the mouth of the alley, saw the suits and the black car, and glanced away again. Riley hitched her bag a little higher on her shoulder. I got lucky, she said. That is all. No, Mercer said. That is not all. He reached into his jacket pocket slowly and pulled out a thin folder. He did not open it. He just held it up between 2 fingers. 3 combat deployments as a special operations combat medic, he said. Attached to a ranger regiment. Commendations for valor. 1 reprimand for insubordination in theater. Discharged honorably with a recommendation for no further deployment. He lowered the folder. Your official file reads like someone took a black marker to whole paragraphs, he said. But there are things you cannot scrub out. Riley looked past him toward the bus stop. A city bus chugged by without stopping, half empty. No one inside looked out. Who are you, really? She asked. We are part of an interagency group that handles problems when they stop fitting neatly in one box, Mercer said. Military intelligence, law enforcement. We sit where the lines blur. That looked tidy enough to me, Riley said. Man got shot. Man almost died. Man did not die. Ortiz stepped closer, staying off the line between Riley and the street. The man on that table, she said, call sign Atlas. He is team lead for a new Joint Special Operations Detachment. They are assigned to this region for a certain period. Riley's grip on her gym bag strap tightened. The name dug into a memory she did not have yet, a blank space that had been waiting to be filled. I do not know any Atlas, she said. You were not supposed to, Ortiz said. Not yet. Mercer placed the folder on the roof of the car, palm flat on it. Atlas's primary objective last night was to move from a secure dock facility to this hospital, he said. Once here, he was supposed to make contact with an asset working in your emergency department. Riley's throat felt suddenly dry. What asset? She asked. Mercer looked at her. You, he said. The single syllable dropped between them like a stone into shallow water. Riley heard traffic far off on the overpass. A siren somewhere else in the city. The wind tugged at the edge of her hood. "You are reaching," she said. "If you had wanted to talk, you could have come through the front door like everyone else." "There is a general at the Pentagon who would disagree," Mercer said mildly. "Everett Strickland." The name clawed at the back of her mind. She saw a flash of desert, a tent, a stack of paperwork on a metal table. Strickland's signature at the bottom of a form that had sent her home. "He signed off on your discharge recommendation," Mercer said. "You embarrassed him. You contradicted an order in the field, saved the life of the wrong kid, on the wrong day. That kid happened to be the son of a senator, which meant Strickland could not crush you publicly. So he had to get creative." Riley swallowed. "He did not get me court-martialed," she said. "He did not strip my rank. He just reassigned me to rear support, then my enlistment ended. That is all. He made sure that every application you filed to get back in disappeared in a pile," Ortiz said. "Every packet for contractor work stalled. Every lead went dark. You did not just drift into St. Raphael as a night shift RN Riley. You were funneled." Nice quiet out of the way. Just useful enough. Just frustrated enough. Mercer tapped the folder once with 2 fingers. Atlas and his unit were briefed to extract a former SOCM medic who had been buried like that by a senior officer, he said. Their orders were to make contact, evaluate, and if you matched the file, offer you a place on their team. They did not make it to the elevator, Ortiz said. Rival network hit them between the dock and the loading bay. Atlas took the worst of it. His men got him into the SUV and straight to you. They did not have time to explain anything to your staff. Riley pictured the cluster patterns of the bullet wounds, the shredded armor, the tourniquet that had fallen from his leg, the tactical medic's eyes on her as they had left the room. "They knew you were here for a medic," Mercer said. "They just did not know which one. You identified yourself pretty clearly." A faint, almost unwilling smile pulled at the corner of Ortiz's mouth. "Cracking his chest open with your hands in front of your boss was certainly one way to introduce yourself," she said. Riley looked down at her own hands. They were clean now, but her skin still felt too tight around the knuckles, like it remembered the stretch. "The hospital just fired me," she said. "I'm getting on a bus going back to an apartment with a leaky ceiling and bad neighbors. Tomorrow, I will figure out what job a nurse gets after she has been escorted off the premises. That is the extent of my plan." Mercer walked to the rear door of the sedan and opened it. The interior was dark leather seats catching the thin light in a dull sheen. There was a faint smell of gun oil and coffee inside. "Dr. Harlow did you a favor," Mercer said. "He cut you loose from a place that never deserved what you bring to a table like that." Ortiz rested one arm on the roof of the car, fingers tapping a small arrhythmic pattern. "Atlas is up there trying hard not to die," she said. "If he holds on, he will need a medic who knows how his people move and bleed. His team already knows what your file says. Now they know what your hands can do in a bad room." Riley shifted her weight from one foot to the other. The gym bag strap dug into her shoulder. "What is this exactly?" she asked. "Recruitment speech?" Mercer shrugged slightly. "Call it a job offer," he said. "Call it an assignment. Call it a way to stop pretending you are supposed to be changing bed linens in a place where your biggest threat is a lawsuit." He stepped back from the open door, leaving a clear path. "We are wheels up in 4 hours," he said. "We will be traveling to a forward operating location in this region. It is not a conscript situation. You can say no, and we will drive away. You will not see us again." Ortiz watched her closely, but there was no pressure in her eyes. Just assessment and a hint of something like recognition. "You already made your choice once," Ortiz said. "On that field with Strickland in your ear. You made it again last night in that trauma bay. We are just giving you a place where those choices make sense to the people in charge." Riley looked back at the hospital. The rear door was just visible around the corner, a heavy metal slab with a red exit sign glowing above it. That door had swung closed behind her with a sound that still echoed in her chest. She thought of the humming lights, the charting terminals, the petty rituals of day and night shifts, of Mrs. LeBlanc and her headaches, of Harlow's face when the monitor had started to beep again. She turned back to the sedan. Inside, the darkness looked quiet, no buzz of fluorescent bulbs, no distant overhead pages, just a contained waiting space. She adjusted her grip on the gym bag one more time. "You got gear in there?" she asked. Mercer's mouth twitched, enough to get you started. Riley stepped forward. Her hand closed around the edge of the door frame. The leather seat dipped slightly as she sat. The smell inside wrapped around her familiar in a way the hospital air had never been. She pulled the door in. It shut with a firm click, sealing her off from the alley, the dumpster, the bus stop, the red exit sign. Outside, Mercer walked around to the front and got back into the passenger seat. Ortiz slid in beside Riley in the back, buckling her belt without comment. The sedan eased away from the curb and rolled toward the street. In the side mirror, the bulk of St. Raphael Memorial shrank as they turned the corner and merged into the pale morning traffic. Riley rested her forearms on her knees and laced her fingers together. Her hands were no longer empty. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.